So I'm actually I kind of want to see what the developer said, and like maybe I'll find some things that other people have not found within the developer feedback and such. I just want to watch this.
I'm your host, Peanuts.
Peanuts.
Not my real name, that'd be unfortunate. And joining me today, we have Patrick.
Yo, I'm Patrick, lead
Lead
designer
game.
on Dead by Daylight.
And we
Whoa.
also have Justin.
Hey guys, I'm Justin. I'm one of the product managers on DBD, responsible for strategy and planning for events, archives, and systems.
Now, right off the bat, we have some news and announcements. We're going to talk about the thing that's already popping up in chat from time to time. Patrick, do you want to talk to us about Circle of Healing?
I would love to talk to you about Circle of Healing. It's getting a nerf in the next patch. That's mostly what I have to talk about. So, hey, look, numbers on the screen. That's great. Now I don't need to remember them. Bumping it down at tier 3 from 100% down to 75%.
This is a good
The
change.
plan is to keep looking at how this performs with these reduced values, and we are absolutely willing to do it again if we deem it worthy.
They spent 6 months to make this type of change. They're feeling the water and whether Boon Circle of Healing is overpowered, and they said we will bump it down again if need be. If this perk were ever to get nerfed again, it'd be due to statistics. People are gonna be very happy about this change. Something the community wanted for a very long time.
So with that said, we also have grade rewards being increased for next month.
Sure. So I'm pretty excited that we're actually finally getting around to this because I know when we launched with the grade rewards, they were a little lower than I think what a lot of players were expecting. I think these new values that we've actually come up with are giving much more rewarding for players, and we're also giving you more of an incentive to, go up from one part of a grade to another. It's really cool to be investing into your characters because I know we always need BP for characters, and that's why we're also trying to give out a lot more, to however we can through promo codes, through events.
When it comes to the big giant perk grind for every single character, they're giving everyone more blood points to make that grind faster. A change like this probably means that like perk tiers aren't going to be touched for a little bit. At least they're doing things to mitigate the grind in the meantime.
And the numbers, it didn't feel right to us in terms of how much time players were taking. So we ended up kind of, I would say, tripling the overall values. And so by doing the different segments and thresholds for different grades, I think it ends up looking even much better.
The next question comes from a lot of different people. They all ask, are there any changes underway for Bloodweb to reduce the grind for perks?
Yeah, I mean, we've known that the grind is a big issue in DBD. It's not much fun. It's not much fun. It's a pretty big grind. We're working on a way to dramatically improve this. We'll hopefully have more to say about it soon, but not right now.
Yeah, that's good.
I know everybody loves that answer.
We need that. We need that.
One thing that we've seen people ask is if the grade rewards are like a band-aid solution to that. They're not. We're not looking at that as a solution.
That's what I was
grind.
worried
It's just
about.
An increase to the grade rewards, nothing more.
Okay, thank God.
We have a
Smart. Good job, Peanuts.
Astrian, who asks, can we please have perk tiers removed?
Good question. Straight up, we've got no plans to remove perk tiers. It is a topic that we talk about internally. It's an idea that gets thrown around, but we have no plans to do it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we have something else in mind, but not removing perk tiers. Yes, it would cut the grind in 2/3, but the grind grows exponentially every time new content is added. Not only are we adding new perks to unlock, but we're also adding more characters to unlock those perks on.
But when he says something like that, we're not removing the perk tiers, we're working on something else. The closest thing I could think of that other games have done in the past is just straight up giving the perks for certain characters that are really old for free. All tier 3 and all that good stuff. Maybe they're doing that. Speculation.
So if we were to do so, it would only be a matter of time before that grind becomes a problem again. The second thing is that it's actually a lot more work to remove the perk tiers than just deleting them. And so if we're going to spend a bunch of time on a solution, we'd rather spend that time on a permanent solution, not something that's only going to be effective for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely.
My idea.
Next question we have, they ask, will there ever be Basekit borrow time or Decisive Strike to address tunneling and camping?
We have no plans to make Decisive Strike base kit.
Okay, I noticed you only mentioned Decisive Strike there. Do we have anything at all planned for Basekit?
We have no plans to make Decisive Strike base kit.
Okay, people are definitely going to pick that apart, but you know what?
Okay, alright. I know a lot of you guys are freaking out about this, right? But like, let's say they make borrowed time base kit for just like 2 seconds. Or like 3 seconds. Only do that. As long as the borrowed time is not like 30 seconds, 10 seconds, a small amount. If it's too much, fucked up. Alright? If it's a little bit, okay, whatever. But if it's a fuck ton, holy fuck, it shouldn't be like that.
So the next question comes from MX Zan, who asks, when's Switch cross progression coming?
With all the technical aspects beyond our control, transferring DLC between platforms has not really been possible. So we're aiming to deliver the best, most consistent cross progression experience we can. So unfortunately, we're not able to provide a clear ETA on when we can actually expect it for the Switch. As soon as we have a more concrete date to share, we're certainly going to let you guys know.
Is console cross progression coming?
It's going to be, I'd say, similar restriction. So it's not for the time being. It's still something we really want to do. Like, we all play, a lot of us have Switches, PS4s, PS5s, Xboxes, and we'd love to be able to play on all of them. It's just not something that we can promise because it's not solely our decision. It's a lot of gears moving at the same time, so it takes time to get it working.
Switching gears, we have a question from the King, who asks, will Boon totems be getting any changes? I can't read.
Yeah, Boon totems and their general mechanics aren't going to see any sweeping changes anytime soon. They're generally working as intended. They don't show, any significant signs of being overpowered or a problem. Again, overall. That said, I already talked about, Circle of Healing, right? And in that same vein, we are looking at each individual Boon perk and, considering their individual balance. But Boon's the overall system. It's not going to see any major changes anytime soon.
I feel like Circle of Healing was the only really overpowered Boon totem. It's glad that that's getting addressed. And in the future, Boon Circle of Healing is probably going to get touched. Might get touched again. We'll have to see. Depends on the stats, etc. Reasonable.
Next question comes from Deadly Cobra, who asks, are there plans to fix the issue of dead hard validation having adverse effects on certain killers' powers?
Yeah, this is
yeah,
huge.
I mean, this is something we have to look at on a case-by-case basis with each power, so it's a little bit slow going. They're all on our radar, though. We are listening to what you guys are saying and calling these issues out. Very specifically, I can say things like the Blight's Rush attack and the Nemesis Tentacle attack and how those interface with Dead Hard. It's not as good as we want it to be, so we're looking at those individually, but yeah, case-by-case basis for stuff like that.
When XQC played Huntress and when XQC played Nurse, he got hit validated so many times from Dead Hard. He's like, what? What is this fucking game, dude? It says I hit him. It says I hit it. It says, oh, what is it? And for the pure aesthetic of new people playing your game, you're like, what? They got hit. It says it got hit, but they didn't get hit. That should definitely get fixed. But that's a must fix, in my opinion.
Hex Ruin was reworked because most killers used it in almost every match. Will Dead Hard be reworked?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we are looking at Dead Hard, right? It's a particularly tricky one because some of the friction with this perk comes from the design and some of it comes from the network and the technical implementation. Anytime you have something that's extremely time sensitive, I can't speak either, in an online game, like reacting and dodging a hit, you end up with something that can be negatively impacted by latency, network conditions, stuff like that. We need to come at Dead Hard from both the design side and from the technical side, but that also means it's gonna take a while to kind of unravel it and get it to a place that everybody is happy with.
I think this is alright, as long as Dead Hard's being looked at, I personally don't think it's overpowered. That's just me. I'm a killer main. Doesn't bother me that much. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the other question is, what aspect of Dead Hard are we really thinking about changing? Are we thinking about changing the way people use it for distance, or are we thinking more about the way people use it to dodge a hit?
Distance, probably.
Yeah, I mean, on the technical side, we're definitely looking at the hit dodging, how that functions, how the players experience it, how you get feedback, right? How you know that hit got
He's talking about the
dodged,
validation.
stuff like that. There's already some changes coming, I believe, in the upcoming patch, touching on the validation of it. It was in the PTB. From a game design side, we're definitely looking at it specifically in regards to the speed boost and how that can activate regardless of you dodging a hit. It gives it a little bit too much utility beyond what we want Dead Hard to do. So that's another aspect. I don't have anything specific to say about what we're doing there, but those are like the high level aspects that we're investigating right now.
So basically, Dead Hard in general is being reworked, not just for distance, but also for dodging a hit. Just Dead Hard is being reworked in some sort of way. They're looking at it.
Next question comes from Ots Darva, who asks, streamer mode, perk loadout saving, more settings in custom games. Can we expect these quality of life changes anytime soon?
So some of these are definitely coming sooner than later. I don't want to give too
He
much
made a
up on
face
when,
about
but
it.
like, we're looking at a laundry list of these and some similar quality of life features for the future.
It's a lot.
And
You can tell
should
it's
have more
a lot to do.
reveal in the near to mid future, I'll say.
Yeah, so they're working on it. There's a lot to do. You can't get
So
to them
Chris
all really
asks,
fast.
What happened to the early game mechanic you announced in the 4th anniversary stream?
The short answer is that it's not going to happen. We're not doing it. That said, some of those ideas have been recycled into other prototypes, and those are seeing some traction. So there will be something.
They're still
There's
working
more.
on stuff.
We are prototyping more things, just not an early game scenario like people have been talking about.
A lot of people are like, oh, we were just so disappointed we were not getting an early game mechanic. They took these features of the early game mechanic stalling, and they're applying it differently, okay? Something to a similar effect is being pushed to be just like that. That's great.
The sad reality to sharing
It's still
games sooner
recycling.
like that is that sometimes they don't make the cut. So
Exactly.
it's a big part of the reason why we don't give ETAs super early on.
I think what Patrick just said is kind of huge. We still have ideas from early game mechanics, but we're taking aspects of that and making them into different features in the future, which is actually even
Next question
better
comes
than
from
just an early game
Jason
mechanic,
Bourdain, who asks,
in my
would
opinion.
it be possible to change the SBMM system to be more skill-based and not based on kills and escapes? I know you could talk about this all day, so I'm going to cut you off if it goes too long.
Yeah, I've got
Oh,
some
no.
notes here, but I'm desperately trying to keep it brief. So I'll please understand I am simplifying some things here. Don't read too much into every detail I'm saying. I'm trying to keep this brief. But there's a common misconception that by using just kills and escapes to adjust your MMR, it's ignoring skill in the game. This isn't the truth, though. This is false. Kills and escapes are proxies for skill, in that skilled play inherently leads to kills or escapes. Think about sports, and I'll use hockey as an example because I'm Canadian. You wouldn't say they only count wins when placing teams in the standings, but they should also count shots on goal too. A more skilled player takes more shots. And while that's certainly true, it's important to remember that shots lead to goals, which lead to wins. So you can kind of cut the middleman out there. And that's the key, right? Skilled play leads to wins. If they don't, are they really skilled plays? Right? If your skilled play doesn't get you to win, was it really a skilled play in the first place?
Yeah. Here's the issue. You got the person running the killer. You got the person doing the gens. You got the person healing people and saving people off hook. Those all lead to escapes. But it's a culmination of all the players together. If someone chases a killer for like 5 gens, this is what Dowsy said, they're doing the best that they can to win the game. But the issue with cutting the middleman out, if I hide in the corner of the map and I survive, and I have a teammate that's chasing the killer for 8 minutes straight and he dies, who's more skilled, the guy that survived or the guy that chased the killer? I generally tend to think the guy that chased the killer. There's a sort of weightedness between these types of things. It's just faulty logic.
Everything leads to the same place in DBD, killing survivors or the survivors escaping alive. That's what MMR predicts. The chances of the killer killing survivors or them escaping alive. And it is actually very good at doing that. We're looking at some improvements to the current system. An example to take is to take team results into account for survivors in addition to the personal results. This takes some time. We have to iterate on. There's lots of fun math, which I could again talk about forever. But we need to prove it out that it's working, that there's value in it and correlations, so on. More details on that more details on skill-based matchmaking in general are actually in our last dev blog post as well.
What I hope this equates to is the efforts of people who chase, are altruistic as fuck, and efforts of the people that actually are doing the gens. Everyone works together so that you survive. Adding the individual input with the team input together would probably be a good way to calculate matchmaking.
Okay. We have a similar question from Jeff Alip, who asks, why don't hooks count towards your rating?
The thing with counting hooks is that you end up with weird cases that don't make sense when you take it to its extremes. Say you're a killer who hooked every survivor twice, but none of them died. If you count those hooks towards your rating, then you can easily end up in a situation where that scenario counts as a win, like moves you up the standings, but that feels weird. Did you really win? Should your rating go up and make you face stronger opponents even though all of the survivors got out alive? Probably not, right? That's like an obvious moment of like, it doesn't really compute. It also doesn't make sense for the survivors. If you call that a killer win, that would mean the survivors lost, but they all got out alive. So that feels weird to call that a loss on the survivor side, unless you start saying that everybody in that situation wins. And then as soon as you can have everybody in a game winning, you get some really weird math, some really crazy stuff starts happening really, really fast. So that's part of why we boil it down to kills and escapes as a proxy for good play in the game. It solves all those problems, and it solves a whole bunch of other ones.
When you focus just on the kills, this type of style incentivizes killers to get a survivor out of the game as fast as possible. Because when you have a system like this in place, top MMR is going to be more about kill rushing, hooking the same person 3 times in a row, over and over and over again until everyone's dead. And from what I heard in this system, it's not just high MMR where people are just kill rushing, hooking the same 3 survivors over and over again. It's all ranks, unfortunately. You're pushing the player base into a system where hooking the same survivor over and over and over again 3 times in a row is incentivized. And I have to ask, is that really fun? Is that where you want your game to go? Is that the direction that you want? And if you say yes to this, okay.
Okay, so getting into a completely different question, we have a question from Pulsar, who asks, when is 60 FPS coming to Xbox One, PS4, and low-end PCs, as promised in this dev post from March of 2019?
So I think we all agreed that roadmap was a little too ambitious and we weren't able to make it happen yet. Because that being said, we're still working on tons of optimizations. So the following notes that I have are a little more from the tech team, so I'm just going to read it very verbatim. So basically, to hit 60 FPS, both the GPU and the CPU frame times need to be below 16 milliseconds. The good news is on the GPU side, we're already below
guy's
that
good.
threshold. Now we just need to work on the CPU side of things. So in 2021, our efforts were focused on converting the old blueprint code to C++ and preventing things from happening off-screen when they're not needed. So this dropped the CPU times from 27 milliseconds in January to 22 milliseconds in December 2021. In the upcoming mid-chapter, we actually have improvements for the nurse and skill checks. Then in the near future, we'll also have improvements for distant objects, off-screen objects, and other stuff that we can't even explain without going into too much detail, like async loading into the match. So we certainly missed the ETA. We definitely want to be improving it, but the dream is still alive. We're still working towards it.
Yeah,
It's
and
good.
I don't
Good
know
shit.
how to even begin explaining what async loading into the match means, but someone much smarter than me is working on that. Can we have some updated killer stats? Justin, can the people have stats?
I don't know, Dylan, can they?
Well, I'm going to show them anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, I figured. I don't bother answering.
Huntress
So there
8%
you
pick
go.
rate.
These are stats from
What's
December
pick rate?
16th to
Let's
January
go.
16th for all the killers. On the left side, you will see the average kill rates for those killers. And on the right a little bit, you'll see the little black bar with the black numbers. Those are their pick rates, so how often they're used. These are for all ratings. These aren't for like just the high end of players or anything. Just note that there's a lot of nuance to these numbers that isn't necessarily shown in these statistics. Like Nurse, for example, is not the worst killer in the game. Even though she's low, it's just an average.
Then they were
Well,
Trickster.
one interesting
Trickster's
thing
a
is that
god.
Huntress is actually the most popular killer at a whopping 8% pick rate.
That's why I don't nerf her. Keep her the way she is.
So there you
It's
go.
perfect. Huntress is nice.
Will we ever see a match replay system where you can rewatch your own matches?
I think it's got to be a kind of a flat no, because as much as we'd love one, it's an extremely technical undertaking. It's the kind of thing where you need the game to be made from the ground up to support this, thinking about it from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Just wasn't designed with that in mind, so it's a lot more work to add it now than it would be if we designed the game with that in mind.
I think a replay system would be really good for forcing hackers. It'd make it easier to report hackers and such through that.
So a quick question from Tataru, who asks, is there any news to share about the Ghostface and Legion updates?
The news is that they're in the pipe and work is underway. To clarify, our live designers play tons and tons of games of that killer. Like, tons and tons of games. They read threads on the forums, they talk to other team members, they talk to the community team to get a better idea of what the community is saying. We still don't have an exact date to give you for when they're going to be delivered, but they are still the next killer updates that you'll see. Work is happening on them right now, and you'll see them as soon as they're done.
Just really quick, can we rule out that it won't be in this next update, just so we don't get our hopes up?
We traditionally release killer updates on mid-chapter patches, not like main chapter patches. So I wouldn't expect to see this in, 5.0 6 or anything like that.
Getting right back into things, we have a question from Annie here, who asks, do you plan to add a practice mode against bots to practice killer powers?
This would be good.
Although we do have bots in for the tutorial, obviously that's doesn't mean we can just throw them everywhere. There's a lot of things we need to consider. So bots require frequent updates whenever you add a new killer power or a new perk. They need to know how to use their powers properly. Survivor bots need to know how to respond to those properly. Same for any perk. They need to know how this perk should react. It's not impossible, not something we've written off.
You can imagine, like, if the bot doesn't know how to play against the pig, for example, you put a reverse bear trap on their head and they just don't know how to take it off. So you put a bear trap on them and they die. They'll never get out of it. Similar question, also about bots from Fantasy, who asks, when a survivor disconnects, can a bot replace them?
Our stance on this is that Dead by Daylight is inherently a multiplayer game, and the human element of that is core to the experience. Bots are a great tool for teaching, they're great for practicing against, but they will never compete on the same level as a real human being.
One of the things about bots is that they sound really great on paper, but then that kind of turns when you're on the hook and they're just slowly sneaking towards you, and then they get caught and they start feeding into the killer's pop goes the weasel or pain resonance or something. Then it becomes very frustrating very quickly. Question from Tiufal, who asks, will Year 7 focus more on game health instead of new content?
So short answer for that is we are continuously working on both. So we actually have separate teams that handle each of these, so we are able to work on them all simultaneously. I mean, you can imagine we can't throw artists and have them directly work on something else. So we've actually got tons of game health and quality of life focused content in the pipeline that we hope to share with everyone later this summer. So stay tuned for all of our broadcasts and everything. Like, we are going to be revealing more.
Can survivor spawn and hex locations be improved? They specifically mentioned survivors spawning close to a generator or to a hex totem.
Yeah, we're always looking at improvements to our procedural generation system. Something we tweak fairly regularly. They're quite hard to do though, and they're really hard to test, right? Something happens in 1 out of every 500 games. Those things are slow and a little more difficult to do, but we are always looking at them.
Yeah, there's also a catch here in that if you start adding a bunch of rules for where survivors can't spawn, like if you say you can't spawn near a hex totem, that immediately rules out a big part of the map. And that can create other issues where maybe instead of spawning next to a hex, you spawn right beside the killer.
What if they did something where the totem can't be cleansed within the first 10 seconds, and automatically, randomly, one of the totems on the map becomes a hex totem? And you'd be like, oh, but they could just cleanse the totem before they light up. Make it so that the totems are uncleansable for the period of time for hex totems. Ooh, that's a good idea.
We also try to hide those totems better when we update maps. The issue of cheaters, can we get an acknowledgement?
Cheaters suck, right? Cheaters suck. We all dislike cheaters. You guys all hate them. I hate cheaters.
Fuck cheaters.
How can you be so brave, Pat?
I know.
So brave.
Get 'em!
Yeah, something so
Get 'em!
controversial. Yeah.
I've been recording them like
but,
crazy, dude.
yeah, the thing is, the nature of cheats, hacking, right? That's where most of these cheats come from. That puts us in a bit of a bind as game developers. Anytime you talk about cheating or anti-cheating, you're providing information to the enemy. It's like a flare goes up. So please, please, please understand that when we are remaining silent about cheating, it's often happening in order to break this cycle.
The reason why we don't go into specifics in the
We
patch
need-
notes is because, again, we don't want to, put a target on like, this is what we fixed, go break it again. Follow-up question from Epic Warhawk. We have any chance for a new anti-cheat system?
So for this one, we're actually going to be changing the, I think it's the EOS is standing for Epic Online Services version of EAC to eventually support the Steam Deck. But we've no plans for a new system beyond that.
Yeah, just a quick note. There's work to be done within the game itself, not just on the anti-cheat. It's also on us to fix those vulnerabilities as they come up.
Yeah.
Next question is from Chuck Lit, who asks, any plans to slightly slow down gens, especially early game? They give the example of having to find like a special tool to fix the gens.
We've actually tried mechanics like, hunting for special items at the start of the game in the past. I mean, we were talking about the early game stuff earlier in this Q&A. Just like those during playtesting, they were pretty resoundingly rejected. They just weren't fun. They just added a level of complexity that most people didn't find to be enjoyable about the game.
A change like this to slightly slow down the generators, this is only really needed when gens are flying, like within 5 minutes or less. Make it so that it's a mechanic that only like high MMR gamers need to do or something. And like if you're mid or low MMR, you don't need to do the parts and stuff. This is a mechanic only for them.
That said, generator timings and the general slow down meta are something that we're talking about right now, and hopefully we'll have more news to share on that as soon.
Yep.
The Deadman Switch meta and Boil Over meta. Deadman Switch is extremely strong, and they're bringing a lot of insane killer tools. We'll only really know the direction that the BHVR is going with through this when the Ringu chapter comes out and there's new killer perks, new survivor perks, etc.
I just want to clarify, are we also looking at the survivor meta as well?
Oh yeah, we're looking at the meta on both sides. Soon.
That should be a given.
More to talk about soon.
Should be a given,
Keep
100%.
saying that word. Alex Segrab asks, will we ever see a visual rework for the older Moris?
This is certainly something that's in our backlog as something we want to do, but we don't have any specific timeline for it. If like we're talking about Trapper, Wraith, Hillbilly, I think they could really use, like we all agreed they could use some love.
Dwight Fairfield, I don't think that's the real Dwight, asks, is there anything planned for the shape?
Simple answer there. Nothing on the immediate horizon.
Not true. They changed the shape so that if a survivor is far away, you get as much stalk as if they were really close to you, and the stalk is less buggy. This was a lie, okay? They fixed my boy.
We've sort of moved away from making like big updates to a single killer in an update.
A huge
and
update? What are they talking about?
Spread those changes around to multiple killers.
It was
One of the
huge.
things about having
They did that this
26 killers
patch.
in the game is that if we change one of them, we've only changed 1/26th of the game. Next question comes from Cake Duty. During your last Q&A, you spoke about some balance changes made to Facecamping, but couldn't talk more about them yet. Is it possible to share them with us now?
Hard time Basekit.
I mean, the updates on that one, great question, is we're still working on it. We've got an internal prototype that we're playtesting like now-ish. I think it recently got finished, and we're organizing our playtest to take a look at it. But that's an early prototype, right? So it's still a long way from being completed. You know, game development, especially on a project the size and complexity of Dead by Daylight, takes a lot of time. We've got a lot going on, and we have to you know, balance those priorities. But we are trying to, you know, give you guys hints and tidbits about what we're doing sooner than usual.
From our Japanese community, we have a question from Hikarun, who asks, why do you nerf add-ons of killers who are unpopular or have lower kill rates?
We often talk about kill rates, you know, as a blanket term. It's a bit of shorthand, but there is obviously a lot of nuance to it, right? Players at different skill levels,
Play
MMR, right,
more killers.
perform differently using the same killer.
Oh.
The Twins is actually a really, really good example of this. They're not picked that often, and they're especially not very effective in terms of kill rate at low and mid-tier MMR, but they are absolute monsters at high-end MMR.
I'm not really sure about this, by the way.
Absolute highest kill rate in the game right now are playing Twins. There are Twins players.
There's very few Twins players, so it's very difficult to get more data points. If more people played Twins at high MMR, there'd be more people using their dead hard when like timing it so that when Victor pounces, they dead hard and they kick Victor. I kind of disagree that Twins are like amazing at high MMR.
So buffing add-ons for the Twins doesn't make sense explicitly in a situation like this, because while it might increase the effectiveness of the killer at the low and the mid tier, it will absolutely further their imbalance at the high end of MMR, right? This is the kind of challenges that we're dealing with as game designers all the time. Nerfing them might seem a little bit cruel. You look at how often that killer is killing when there's no add-ons or when there's different add-ons on, and then you look at the kill rate once that add-on's in and you go, oh, that kill rate goes flying up way too high. That's an example of what we're looking for. It's also worth remembering, we did buff some add-ons in this pass, right? We don't just nerf add-ons for these killers. We do buff them, right? Twins, again,
They do both.
Iridescent Pendant.
They buff,
and,
they
Baby
nerf,
Teeth
they buff,
were
they nerf.
weaker add-ons.
Bounces
They
out.
don't see great correlation with kill rate. So we buffed them. We saw their, you know, you've seen their durations extended significantly in this patch with an aim to make them more appealing, more interesting, and more well-balanced.
D-Tat, who asks, are you planning on implementing any new game modes?
Yeah, this is something
split
that's
the community.
been in discussion for a while internally.
The issue.
We're working on improving our matchmaking overall, but we're also at the same time investigating the impact of splitting the queue between our main mode and some other hypothetical mode. It's uncertain right now what this other mode would be or how long it would be available for. We want to ensure that we can properly support our players to play the role they choose without having to wait for a substantial amount of time. If our current state of matchmaking would be found to break matchmaking queues for those intending to play, the regular game when there are other modes available, then that's not a good thing, right? We got to keep every aspect of the game viable.
Shrimpy asks, can we get a little more info on those Survivor solo queue improvements?
I'm gonna have to give everybody's favorite answer in there. We don't have much to reveal about that right now. It's again very early in the design process. It's something that we're looking at and debating internally how we're going to do it, and we want to know what kind of things solo queue survivors are looking at getting to improve their play experience.
They have a solo queue thing where you're like, oh, yo, you can see that your teammate's on a gen, you can see that a teammate's doing this, you can see a teammate's healing, etc., all that good stuff. They're thinking of adding like, oh, giving the information to solo queue players. I'm like, oh, what's my team doing? Oh, maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to fill this role. Maybe to fill that role. That's part of it. Huge.
I just really quickly want to shout out 99th Cloud from Reddit, who made an amazing mock-up. I'll put it on screen right now. Of how that could look. There are some great discussions about this. Please keep them coming. They're amazing.
Yeah, it's nice to hear how you guys talk about what would be great for the survivor experience. But what killers think about it as well is also very important. So we're following those discussions very closely.
Dude.
It's great to see everyone passionately talking about it, because when we do it, we want to do it right.
Our next question comes from Poorly Python, who asks, will Iridescent Shards ever be easier to earn?
So we've begun giving out shards as login rewards more often. I'd say mostly for bigger events, but sometimes for smaller ones, like even during Bone Chill and the login calendar surrounding that. There are currently no plans.
Okay.
So just hang around for events and login rewards when they happen for the best chance to get some quick iridescent shards.
I think the way they're doing it now is great.
To give like the super dedicated players out there a way to earn content for free. The next question comes from Gemalaski, who asks, can you let us know which maps have the most escapes and kills?
Again,
I'm showing them anyway.
I guess.
Yeah, so the killingest map is surprising. Midwich Elementary School.
That's quite a small map. Very straightforward. Not that many pallets. Makes sense.
Killingest? I mean, survivingest. Yeah, I accept that one.
Yeah, it's about 50%. So if you're going to 1v1 someone, 1v1 them at Cowshed. Next question comes from Majura, who asks, what is the killer and survivor player distribution? They say that queue times for survivor for them seem shorter during the day than they do at night.
Internally, we call this sort of concept the role ratio. Right, it's the ratio between killer and survivors who are in the queue at any given time. In a perfect world, you want that to be 4 to 1. Survivors to killers, right? So 4 survivors for every killer. That would make it really great. But the truth is that that ratio, that value, fluctuates throughout the day.
Drastically.
It shifts based on tons of different factors.
The Boon totem change threw this ratio haywire, actually. Ever since the developers did this patch, this most recent patch, that distribution has been getting more to equilibrium, in my opinion.
The time of day, seeing it queue times shift from daytime to nighttime, that's a really big one. Region, different areas of the world see their shifts happen, and the platform, Xbox versus PlayStation versus PC. So I can't actually give you a specific answer on this about what the player distribution is, because in terms of how it affects matchmaking, by the time I finish the sentence, it will be wrong.
Right now, the boil over changes are greatly impacting what people are doing as killer. It's greatly impacting killer experience and survivor experience. So it also not only fluctuates because of seasonality, but also because of perk choices, in my opinion, as well.
Will SBMM ratings be visible?
Not anytime soon. Having a visible MMR is something that will absolutely lead to a lot of toxic elitism, and we don't want to encourage that kind of...
Dude, that already exists in the community. I like the idea of not having the ratings visible. There'll be this invisible force to be like, oh, I need to make sure I'm maximum more. I need to show that I'm this. I need to show that I'm that. I need to keep push. Some people just want to chill,
What we do want is to have a way for our more competitively minded gamers to get feedback on their standing within the game, something a little bit more meaningful than the current grade system is. And we want to do that eventually.
We have a question from Mooks, who asks, are you planning on running more experimental test runs similar to the weekend with Disabled Bloodlust?
Right now, we don't have anything planned. We just don't have anything we need to do a big game-wide test like that on. It's worth noting, however, in the upcoming patch, we've added a beta tab to try out some new feature ideas in there, things that are a little bit more reduced in scope. So if we ever have something worthy of like a test like that, the Bloodlust one, there's the word, we will absolutely do it. We just don't have one that we want to do right now.
Next question comes from Maximo, who says, any plan to rework the perk system in the future? They specifically mention a point-based system where weaker perks cost less points to equip.
There's no plans to rework the perk system in that kind of a way beyond the stuff that we talked about, teased really previously about progression system overhauls.
So the 4 perk systems kind of forces you to pick what you want to specialize in. All right, next question is from Cryptos, who asks, will we ever be able to change the lobby background?
Short answer is no. We're not planning to add that. I know we all have our favorite lobbies from past chapters and events. I mean, as someone who's like working with the events teams on some of those and seeing the ones for chapters, they're super cool. And we tend to just do those themed lobbies tying into whatever's going on at the moment.
Yeah, like the holidays and stuff.
Everything that's going on makes the game feel alive, and makes it feel special. Even when you're just queuing up.
Nocturne, who asks, are you looking at doing some quality of life changes for the twins anytime soon?
The twins, another twins question.
Should I do the banner?
I think you have a banner. Yeah, I think you have a disclaimer to help me. Okay, there we go. Not in the next update. You have been warned. Okay. The twins come up in discussion regularly, and they are likely to be the next killer to see love after the Ghostface and Legion updates that we were talking about previously. This is not coming anytime soon. Look at the banner. Look at the banner. Not coming anytime soon. Please don't freak out that it's not in the next patch or anything. The twins changes are going to take a lot of time. There's a lot to do with the twins, specifically due to the nature of the killer, to clean up a lot of the friction points that people are experiencing, to take into account a lot of the feedback we're getting. It's going to take time. It's tricky. Will be done. Not anytime soon.
Similar question from Tanner and Jemalaski, who ask, how do you consider what's a priority to change and update and what's not?
Yeah, specifically in regards to game balance stuff, right? We look at both quantitative and qualitative data, 2 keywords that are quite long and hard to say. So quantitative data from quantity, right? That's stuff like just raw numbers that we track over thousands or even millions of matches. For example, when a killer uses a specific perk in a match, how much does that impact the kill rate? Do they kill 5% more than when they don't use the perk? Do they kill 20% more? Do they kill less? That happens sometimes. You see perks that make it so you actually kill less when they're really poorly balanced, right? So we compare use rates like that to MMR as well. Perks that are used more often at high MMR are likely strong and result in more wins, hence the climb up the MMR ladder. These are just some examples. There's tons and tons more stats that we look at, lots of different things. I'm just giving you a taste of some of the really obvious ones that are kind of interesting. Qualitative data, quality is more personal and more individual. It's more subjective. For stuff like this, we read the forums, right? We talk to players. We do deep dives into the practical use of perks in typical matches, really, try to understand not how they're performing, but how they feel. Designers play with the perk. We play against it exclusively. We watch lots of streams. We really just gather the individual anecdotal data rather than looking at just raw stats, right? When you think that we're just looking at raw stats, no, it's just part of the overall picture that we're bringing together here. The list of what we need to tweak is actually extremely fluid. We're always moving things around on it and trying to be as flexible as possible.
Have you ever thought about revisiting a chapter? So adding a survivor or a map to something that didn't already have one?
But we've touched on this in the past, and I think we'd all love to see a map based on the all-kill lobby. I think that one was pretty obvious. Not planned for the moment, but we won't rule it out for the future. But yes, we've thought about it. It's all based on what like the level art and level design, bandwidth and resources that we have. So again, not to rule it out. Could happen, but nothing set in stone.
Next question comes from Big Chap Alien, who asks, can we get a search bar for perks?
Without going to specifics, we've been looking at the flow of equipping perks, and we've got a few improvements that will be coming out soon, sooner than my usual
Quality of
soons
life.
that I've been giving. I don't have the exact dates
batch.
On hand, so I can't
Next
give you any
batch.
promises, but those ones are coming very, very soon.
It-
That'll make things easier for all players, both PC and console players, for equipping perks and just generally cleaning up that flow.
I'm a beginner killer. Survivors I match with are sometimes iridescent grade, and I'm overwhelmed. Is skill-based matchmaking really working?
That's a great question. I understand where it's coming from. So first of all, it's important to remember that the grade that you see, in this case, iridescent grade, isn't really an indicator of skill or MMR. It's not an indicator from the skill-based matchmaking system. Don't be afraid of those folks with iridescent grades showing up. All it means is that they've played a fair bit this month, right? Remember, 13th of every month, everybody goes back down to the bottom. You all start the climb again. So if you play on the 13th or on the 14th, I doubt you'll see too many iridescents, although I'm sure somebody's going to take that as a challenge. So yeah, in terms
We've done
of the
that before in one day.
the MMR system itself, and I'm going to be very careful when I say this, and put a lot of caveats here. The MMR system itself, the ratings, is absolutely working well. I'm going to expect the chat to explode in 2 seconds. We've gathered tons and tons of data that show it's really good at predicting match outcomes. The problem, and there is a problem, I am admitting there's problems here, lies more with the matchmaking system itself and the situations where it puts players into a game that it already knows will be imbalanced. So, matchmaking is always a bit of a balancing act between speed and fairness. You can find matches really, really fast in any matchmaking system, but they will be comically unbalanced and unfair and not fun for the people involved. You can also make all matches extremely balanced, but it'll take hours to find them. It would be really easy for us to say every match is perfectly balanced if y'all were willing to wait for 3 hours to play every single match. That doesn't sound like a good time, though. So, there are places in our system that prioritize speed over fairness right now a little bit too much. And I think one of the prime examples, and likely where a lot of these problems are coming from, is from a concept that we call backfilling. This is when a player quits from a lobby or doesn't manage to connect to the lobby due to a network issue that they're having. So, the lobby where you're seeing all the players before the game actually starts. In this case, when a player doesn't make it in or they disconnect from there, we massively prioritize speed. So that is something very, very specific that we're looking at improving right now.
That's something that's been happening a lot in this current matchmaking system. I seem to be facing, when I play Huntress, sometimes I get survivors are just straight like new to the game. Like, we're just decimating you, dude. That's just nuts. I don't know what to do. But in all honesty, I don't really want a sweat match every single game that I play as well. Granted that. Sometimes I just want to play casually. What I usually do to play casually is play other killers. Maybe that's just how things are. If you want to play Huntress, where you're gonna have to face like really hardcore gamers.
Sure. So just to give an example, if you have like a really high rating lobby and then the killer dodges, for example, it might grab a newer killer, and just throw them into that lobby because it wants to fill that lobby really quickly. And so that's something that we're looking into, making sure that those matches don't happen to begin with. Do you have a plan to give killers BP or XP when they're matched with a survivor friend group for motivation?
There's nothing currently planned. I think it's something that's better to look at is, how do we properly compensate and deal with that? There's other ways I think we can be dealing with that. And I think even just adjusting how the matchmaking works would be a better way. But again, nothing planned. But discussions are going on, for ways that can balance a killer better if they are going against the group.
The only issue is that all max MMR survivors, all max MMR killer, all the gens done in 4 minutes. What about that situation, Like, just changing matchmaking won't fix that. If we're talking about doing other things and like fixing matchmaking and such, I think it'd also be like a gameplay mechanic type thing at high MMR possibly, and maybe making something exclusive for high MMR players. We haven't gotten to that point. Once they fix the matchmaking and that problem starts arising more, they'll probably look more towards into that. I can see that being an issue in the next coming future.
Next question is: can you let players know when they get a thumbs up, and maybe give them some BP for it as well?
So I think we've actually discussed a bit about improving this whole system in terms of, I'll generally say, like rewarding or endorsing other players. But there's currently no plans to actually change it. But maybe in the future, we're looking at ways we can encourage positive reinforcement through players.
So like Overwatch has like an endorsement feature. It's like, yo, you did well. I'm gonna give you a thumbs up. And like, damn, I'm gonna play well next time because I want more people to like me. So you get like loot boxes for free loot boxes for like, oh yeah, I got a lot of endorsements this season. Incentivize people to play more fun.
Has a perk ever been scrapped because it's too powerful, weak, or funny? And if we have the reason to, then they'd love to know.
I'd love to. The truth is that most of our crazy perk ideas die really, really early in the design process. Our designer, we'll have a brainstorm. A designer will throw out a perk idea, and someone will just go, "Oh, here's an obvious problem with that. Here's an obvious issue, or that thing is going to be really OP if you use it with something else." So these days, we really don't scrap any perks that make it to the playtesting stage. That happens very, very, very rarely.
I think it's crazy that the boil over one got pushed to live because of the RCPD library. The infinites problem is massively overlooked in my opinion.
Our main perk designer, honestly, I think this is a really good compliment to our perks design team. They've been doing a great job. They have good perk ideas kind of right out the gate, ones that are interesting, ones that are fairly well balanced. We just don't get these really goofy, silly perks anymore.
Next question we have is, do you plan to add an exposed add-on to the nurse, like Blight and Deathslinger?
We're not planning on anything like that specifically. Doesn't mean it's off the table, but we're just not planning on doing something like that. There's a lot of add-ons in the game. I think we've made a few jokes about that already. We're constantly rebalancing them, retooling them, taking looks at them, right? We were talking about the big 5.3.0 patch, right? That had a lot of add-on changes in it. So maybe in the future something like that will happen when we're looking at add-ons for those killers, but nothing explicit. I have nothing to tease.
Nurse is like the best killer in the game. I don't know if they do that though, to be honest.
We put an exposed add-on on a killer, but most of the time we don't. It's only really if it fits in the killer's power, and
yeah,
I feel like Nurse probably doesn't need it. I think she's one of the strongest killers in the right hand.
Yeah, that's my gut says probably not on the Nurse, but yeah, anything can happen. So.
Well, the next question is, do you plan to increase the 1 million BP cap?
So, man, we've really been thinking about this one recently because we hear this a lot. For now, I can really only say that blood points, like any blood points you get from promo codes, login gifts, the season grade rewards will never count towards this cap and always let you surpass it until you, I think we mentioned this earlier as well. As soon as you do surpass it with one of those, you do have to drop back down before you can naturally gain BP. But if you wanted to surpass it and keep on using promo codes, those would keep on piling up.
We used to be like really dead set against removing the cap, but I think it's open to discussion now, especially now that we're giving like up to 2 million points a month. Maybe the time has come, you never know.
I would say if we're always giving these what we call bonus blood points that surpass the cap, why have a cap at all? So that's why the discussion is kind of coming back up again of like, well, why not?
Are there plans to buff killers who struggle against Survive with Friends?
Not really. We generally try to avoid balance changes to individual killers specifically for their performance against Survive with Friends or solo survivors or anything like that. And the main reason why we avoid doing it specifically for how they handle Survive with Friends is because that tends to lead to that killer being overpowered when facing off against solo survivors. So the goal is to just have them be balanced across the board, but we generally don't target killers that are already out just because of Survive with Friends kind of balancing stuff.
I'm the one that has to deal with this a lot. When they do the gens in less than 5 minutes, this is probably like the fourth time I've said this. When like, it doesn't matter, Survive with Friends or solo survivors, when they do the gens in less than 5 minutes or 4 minutes tops, holy crap, how do you, oh my god. I feel like there's nothing I can do. And if they don't have any plans to do something about that, oh my god. It is just going to be a sweat fest. It's just going to be the way that things are, at high MMR. It's just, damn, I don't know. I know I might be overreacting. They're adding more tools to make it easier to beat a SWF, like Deadman's Switch, Scourge, Gift of Pain. Those are good perks to actually help counter that type of stuff. But I feel like that those probably need to be tweaked a little bit. As long as there's enough tools to go around to help with those really fast 5-gen games, I just don't know if it's enough. That's why I just freak out all the time, man.
Again, like we mentioned before, we try to avoid doing things specifically for Survive with Friends. The goal is really to close that gap so you don't need to in the first place. Okay, so the last question we have is from Standemic over from our Russian community. Would the end Game Collapse System be reworked somehow? It's easy to control from the survivor side by leaving the gates almost powered so survivors don't feel any oppression from it.
A good question.
I don't think they need to do anything about it, in my opinion.
Isn't supposed to really be oppressive. it exists to prevent stalemate scenarios. So before the endgame collapse was in DBD, there were lots of situations and lots of times where the game would kind of end in a stalemate. The survivors would be hidden, and the killer would be in a perfect defensive position, standing over the hatch or something like that, and no one would really move, right? There's to no one's benefit to move around, so you'd end up in this gross stalemate kind of situation. The EGC adds a time pressure, right? It forces one side, in this case the survivors, to make a play and to make decisions and to do something where previously they would just hold still indefinitely. So this just keeps the game moving towards an inevitable conclusion. So with that in mind, the endgame collapse works great. It does that thing.
Yeah,
and
I don't think it
no
needs
plans
to
change it.
be changed at all.
Yeah, and if you ever do want the survivors to be up against the clock, you can open it yourself, and that'll start the clock and let you use Blood Warden, for example. All right, so that's the end of our Q&A part. Just a quick recap of the news. We have a Circle of Healing nerf on the way. It's on screen right there. 100% heal speeds being reduced to 75%.
Good change.
We also have new grade rewards on the way. You can earn up to 1 million points per side per month. So
Also good change.
play both sides and you
Good
get
shit.
1 million points.
I think there were some good things that that behavior was like thinking of. There's a lot that needs to be done. It takes a lot to get things done. It takes a lot from point A to point B. Yes, there is a little bit of oversighting when it comes to the matchmaking system. Yes, they're a little bit disconnected when it comes to veterans and when it comes to like, oh, yo, gens get done in 5 minutes. We're trying to, they're doing that gameplay wise by implementing perks that are stronger. There's a little bit of disconnect with like, maybe there isn't that much of a disconnect. They're just like, oh yeah, we did this. So now matchmaking should be a little bit better for you guys if you use Dead Man Switch and all this other stuff. But overall, a lot of the changes seem like they're good. My complete unbiased opinion, like I'm very critical on behavior. Boilover is very scoffed right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A overview of the devs, and I hope you guys liked my feedback and my ideas on it. And hope to see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.